Ladies and gentlemen, now let's welcome on stage from our sponsor and one of the most innovative technology companies in the world, Adobe, the head of strategic marketing for EMEA. Please welcome Jamie Brighton.
I had the shortest walk on stage, which is probably a good thing because I was probably the most likely to fall over. So, like one of our speakers said before, first mission accomplished. It's a privilege to be down here today with you. I've come down from London. Clearly, South African Airlines is a lot more reliable than Air France, which is a good start. But it's been really interesting for me sitting in the audience today and hearing some of the challenges that you're facing here. Clearly, there are some challenges that are unique to South Africa, but there are a lot of challenges that we're hearing that are affecting organizations globally. And what I'd like to do in my short presentation today is just look at a little bit of how some of the technology that's out there can help us address some of these challenges. Our mission at Adobe for the last 30 years has been to change the world through digital experiences. Now, one of the challenges with that is that we can't always control how people actually use the technology and the experiences that they create. Probably one of the worst slides that you've seen today, possibly in your life, and amplified even more by the fact that this was actually a flash introduction to a website in the UK, built by yours truly. And I would say that I was a web developer at the start of my career in digital rather than a designer, although that's probably pretty evident. So the rise of the flash intro, one area that certainly Macromedia at the time and Adobe wasn't able necessarily to control. Now, I got this screen grab from the Internet Archive, the Wayback Machine, and it's probably a good thing that the Internet Archive actually doesn't store the flash version. So this is the version that would play if you didn't have the plugin. You'll have to take my word for it that essentially this was a fascinating piece that lasted about 90 seconds. Each of these letters came in individually. I'm serious. I think possibly the logo spun round, and there was some great classical music, which I may or may not have licensed at the time, which was playing. The crucial thing was that the enter button, the most important part of this really, didn't appear until the whole thing had played through. And believe it or not, there was no skip intro. And actually, I looked, and this is available, so you can call me to task on this, but I think it took us something like 9 months to realize that actually we needed to put a skip intro underneath the flash. We didn't remove the flash intro, but we just thought that we were doing the right thing by putting a skip intro button there. The thing that's missing from this is the data to tell us that people simply weren't watching the video or the flash intro all the way through. If we'd had the concept of bounce rates back in 1999 when I used my copy of, actually I think it might have been a cracked copy of Macromedia 3 probably shouldn't have said that on stage in front of this audience, but to build that, if we'd had this concept of bounce rate, we'd have seen probably 100% or very close to 100% bounce rate. Technology's changed a lot, thankfully, in the time since then. And as marketers and organizations, really, it's become even more complicated. We've seen a big explosion in the types of device, the types of channel that we need to communicate with customers and with people on. And we're talking to marketers all the time at Adobe, trying to understand what are the challenges that they're facing and what are the things that really effectively keep them up at night. We recently conducted a survey, a global survey of marketers, and you'll probably get an understanding of the results when I say that we ended up calling that survey digital distress. Now, when we asked marketers these sorts of questions, what we heard was 75% of marketers think marketing has changed more in the last 2 years than the last 50. And 66% of marketers feel that their organization won't succeed unless they have a digital strategy in place. Possibly the most crucial stat, nearly half of those marketers felt that they didn't have the tools and the skills that they needed in order to succeed in digital. Just to put that in context, imagine the England cricket team walking out at the Wanderers and nearly 5 or 6 out of the 11 people not feeling that they had the confidence to face the South African cricket team. Actually, on second thoughts, that's probably not such a big stretch of the imagination, but still. So my point is obviously going to be that there's technology out there and companies like Adobe making technology that, as marketers, we need to use in order to do some of that heavy lifting. So I want to talk through a couple of areas here. In terms of data, where have we come from? Well, we've clearly come a long way since Web Trends founded the idea of log file analysis and web analytics back in '93. And that was augmented by the likes of Urchin in '98. And in fact, when I was sitting in London coding that gorgeous Flash intro in '99, two guys at Varsity in North America were beginning to put together the seeds of the idea of Omniture, one of the enterprise versions of web analytics, moving from log files to page tagging and increasingly into things like mobile analytics. And it's not just about the reports and the action that we can take on those reports. Increasingly, we're moving from the idea of diagnostics, what has happened, what has someone done, to being able to predict what someone will do and where we need to, crucially, spend money in terms of things like advertising and marketing budgets. We're spending a lot of time focusing on machine learning, on algorithms, and on the use of maths to basically assist marketers, to help marketers understand really where they should be placing their budgets. The use of algorithms has quite a strong foundation in solving technology challenges. And the example that I would quote is using the use of kind of financial portfolio theory, that being applied to digital advertising to help us understand and automate the way in which we place bids on the likes of Google with our display, our search, and our social advertising. Adobe is putting its faith in data. Just one stat for you. There are quite a few stats actually in this presentation, but still, one other stat for you. Adobe spends 74% of its budgets, of its advertising budgets, in digital, which is pretty high by many standards. But what we're using is our own technology, media mix modeling, to really understand where that money should be being spent. And this is not just across the typical digital channels, but increasingly across above the line and traditional channels. So we can ask questions of the model and say, how do we maximize our return and where should we be spending that money? What that does for us as an organization is it means that if we're spending that money much more wisely, we can then put our funds into things like Adobe Global Voices and the Change for Good programs that we run. And in fact, we actually are then able to donate up to 1% of our pre-tax profits to charitable causes each year. Content is another area where we've seen some quite big advances. When I coded that page, that Flash intro, that was hand-coded HTML4, which I taught myself in 24 hours using one of the now defunct Teach Yourself in 24 Hours books. And it wasn't as a result of the fact that I produced that page that it became defunct, but clearly there might be a relationship there. And we quickly moved to the idea of database-driven sites, and as large organizations trying to bend kind of enterprise document management systems into web content management platforms. What we need today is experience-driven platforms that enable us to create those compelling experiences and get them out there, again, increasingly on different types of technology, such as mobile. And increasingly, the organizations that we're speaking to are becoming mobile first. Or, there's always this one-upmanship. If you listen to Facebook at the Demexco event a couple of weeks ago, mobile best, where the mobile experience is everything that they focus on. Excuse me. What that means is that organizations who have a solid experience platform can really use that for doing good. And I like the example, Premier Inn Hotel Group. I don't believe that they have a presence in South Africa, but they're very strong in the UK. They have a relationship with the Great Ormond Street Hospital, Children's Hospital charity. And they provide a mechanism for people to make donations as they actually book a stay with one of the hotels. By using their experience management platform, they can do A/B testing to work out which versions of that process, of that donation process, actually drive more revenue and more donations to Great Ormond Street. And crucially, based on some of the conversations that we had on the previous panel, they can also do that with one eye on making sure that they're not actually harming the revenue that they're generating. So everyone wins in that particular case. Mobile continues to be an area of disruption and innovation, and the mobile is increasingly becoming kind of the center of our digital lives. And that's only going to increase with the likes of Apple Handoff and Google Home. This idea that we can seamlessly transition between a smartphone, a tablet, and the desktop, or that the mobile itself becomes the center of our connected home. Adobe, we've heard quite a bit today, I think, about the Cannes Lion Awards. Adobe is a sponsor of Cannes Lion. And one of the big prize winners there, which I'm actually surprised that we haven't heard from someone who stood up here today, was an example from Nivea. And maybe some of you are familiar with this, but particularly in Brazil, Nivea launched a campaign which really, it spoke to their core brand values of protection, but it also enabled them to be seen as an innovative company. And they printed humidity-resistant wristbands into magazines that they sent out to subscribers in Rio de Janeiro. And they inserted Bluetooth chips into each of these publications. And when a parent got the magazine, they were able to punch out the wristband, put it on the wrist of their child, pair it with their mobile phone, and when they were active on the beach, they were able to see exactly how far their child had run away from them. So this is just one example of how a brand can go out there and do good and use innovation to reach consumers as well. So imagine what we can do if we bring together the creative side of our organizations, the creative, and put that together with the marketing. So we've got the creative side, building these rich, compelling experiences, and the marketing side, getting these experiences out to people, understanding how they're engaging and interacting with them, and increasingly then enabling us to optimize the experience for people moving forward. The very first panel of the day, one of the participants talked about this idea of actually using the data and using the information that we can collect from people, from things like maybe wearables or from in-store experiences, to actually enable us to do things like product development and to assist with the product life cycles. And this is certainly somewhere that we see things developing, using the data in a creative way to truly understand what customers want, possibly before they've even actually worked out that themselves. With all of this, though, we can't forget one of the fundamental reasons that a lot of us get into marketing, which is this idea of creativity. We need to make sure that we're not distracted by some of the glamour of digital marketing and the new technologies that are out there. And there's underlying good that comes from creativity. So I talked about a marketing survey that Adobe ran at the start of this presentation. We've recently run a survey that really focuses on the impact of creativity to the enterprise. And what we found was that 82% of people think that there's a direct link between how creative their organization is and how well that organization performs. And from a social perspective, those creative organizations are also the ones that are seen as the most favorable places to work. One of the challenges, though, is that nearly half of the people that we talked to, half of the senior managers, felt that their organization was not a creative one. So there's clearly some work for us to do here. So what we need to do is to make sure that we don't forget our creative roots. We don't forget the reasons that we're putting our experiences out there, that we get into marketing in the first place. This digital revolution is not just about the technology. It's not just about data. It's also about people and process. What we're increasingly seeing is that the digital revolution, this new form of marketing, needs a new marketer. And that marketer is increasingly a generalist. Someone who understands the data, knows what needs to be captured, understands what the reports are saying, and also can take action on that insight. But on the other side, someone who also understands the creative impulses that are driving the campaign, driving the reason for collecting that data in the first place. What we really need to do is to reimagine marketing, because I think it's fair to say that often we get caught up in the bright, shiny new thing, the disruptive new technology that comes out, and we forget that actually we're acting like digital is simply an analog campaign, but with better targeting data. What we need to do is to reinvent marketing and to connect the loftiness of some of our ambitions with the data and that foundational layer that's there. And when we do that, we're setting ourselves up for a real industry-wide burst of creativity. So thankfully, as I said when I started, we've come quite a long way in a short time since the likes of my Flash intro. We started there maybe with these crude Flash-based homepages that really didn't understand or try to understand what the consumer wanted. And what we've seen in the meantime, and what we're experiencing right now, is a real revolution in the data and tools that are available to us. And with that data, and with those tools, and also with the correct skills ourselves as marketers, we can go out and we can reach audiences, whether they're customers or whether they're people that we're trying to help, however, wherever they are, and in whatever way they need. And if that's the case, I hope that this digital revolution continues for a long time. And with that, thanks very much.